Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for CEO Exclusive, brought to you by Anona Enterprises.
Good morning and welcome to CEO Exclusive, where we get emerging trends from CEOs and their most trusted advisors. I'm your host, Soyini Koch. I'm really excited. I have the two co-founders of Kabbage, the fintech firm, on my show today, but I'm going to start by telling you all a little story. So 3 years ago, when we launched CEO Exclusive, I said, okay, we're focusing on mid-market CEOs, and we got Kabbage, and there's this big story in fintech. I want Kabbage. And so I, had my list of, the CEOs in Atlanta that I wanted to call, and we called up Kabbage, and I was like, you all want to be on CEO Exclusive? It's this new show for mid-market CEOs, and it's really exciting. You're going to come on and talk about all exciting trends that are happening in your industry. And nothing happened. And then a year later, I was like, you all, Kabbage, you want to come on CEO Exclusive? It's a great new show for mid-market CEOs, and you should come on because so much is happening in fintech, and I really want you to come on and talk about what's happening. Nothing happened. And then a few months ago, their PR company sent us a pitch, and we were like, we want to be on CEOs.
Gosh.
We want to be on.
So embarrassed.
We want to be on CEOs. It's great. No, it's really great. We want to be on CEO Exclusive. So I was
We're not good at checking email. That's not that's actually, the email probably went to you, Kathryn.
That's what I'm terrible at email.
We called them emails. But anyway, so I was like,
calling is
yes. I was like, yes, we got them. They're coming. They're on the show. I'm so excited. So we got Frohwein and Kathryn Petralia from Kabbage today on today's show. I am so excited. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. We're super excited to be here, and sorry it took so long for us to get here.
Well, no, it just means that we're like a legitimate show now, right? Because when we first called, we kind of we're just new, so I'm really excited.
That was really all designed to make you feel good. The whole process.
Thank you. So tell our CEO listeners what's happening in the world of fintech that you think they really, really, really need to know.
Well, I think everybody wants to talk about cryptocurrency and fintech. Fintech is a really interesting term because it means so many different things to people. For some people, it means online lending. For some people, it means cryptocurrencies. For others, it means payment processing, companies like Square and Stripe. So I think there is a lot going on. And a lot of what's going on is around regulatory interest in the space. A lot of it is around using new technologies and consumer adoption.
And which ones do you think a CEO who's trying to grow in the mid-market, which are the ones that you think that they should be paying attention to, and why?
Paying attention, I think, looking outside, obviously Kabbage by far, that should be your 98% focus. But if you want to delve to the other 2%, companies like Stripe's really exciting. They built a huge business really powering transactions for many of the new internet like companies like Uber and Airbnb, and really powering payments for companies like that. They sort of sit in the background, but they're an important part of that force. Square is another company that has done really interesting things on behalf of small businesses, creating really an entire field within payment processing, helping really small businesses be able to accept Visa and MasterCard and Amex. There's a variety of companies on the rise right now, Ripple and others.
Mm-hmm. And so as you think about your own growth, right, and really charting, your path, having this really meteoric rise inside of the industry. What are you thinking about for yourself, and which of these trends do you think are going to be impacting you, and which ones are you paying attention to?
I think it's all about the movement of money for us. So especially for our customers. So if you think about, we serve very small businesses that are, anywhere from 0 to maybe 30 or 40 employees, something along those lines. And what they care about a lot is how much money do they have, and when are they going to have it? And do they have the funds to pay for the things they need? And they care a lot about how their money moves. So we're paying a lot of attention to the distributed ledgers that are moving funds quickly, the business B2B payment networks that are being established for the movement of funds. And these are the same things, again, that I think that the mid-market companies need to be focused on, because it really can streamline processes within their own businesses and allow for better reconciliation and reporting of transactions that are happening in their own businesses.
Mm-hmm. And Rob, one of the things that we talked about yesterday was this being new, but not so new. So a lot of the CEOs who listen to our show are, anywhere from, 5 to up to 250 million in revenue. And as you go through that trajectory, sometimes, you've you're still very much hot, but then you've been around for 10 years as well. So how is that shaping your growth and your outlook on the industry?
I think of myself that way. No, I'm kidding. So it's interesting. We still feel very much like a startup. And, I think there's a couple of things. In fact, sometimes when other folks call us a startup, it kind of makes me think it's like getting carded at a bar,
right?
At the ripe old age of 50. We think of ourselves as a startup. We need to be able to be nimble. We're almost 10 years old now. We really didn't start building technology until about 8.5 years ago. But that technology that we built, was a little while ago, at least in, the rapid rise of various technologies that are used to put companies together like ours. So we have to stay on top of exactly what the new technologies are, make sure that they're part of what we're doing, the way sort of design sensibilities change pretty quickly. But we really see ourselves at the beginning of a journey. And I think I'd mentioned to you yesterday that SoftBank invested in us a year ago. And
congratulations. That's awesome.
Thanks. And they have a vision fund. And that vision fund really, I think, focuses on companies that have reached a certain level of size. We're now, in the hundreds of millions of revenue.
Congratulations again.
Thanks. But are really still at the beginning of their journey. And I think that's what's really interesting. When we think about where Kabbage is going, we're excited about the revenue that we've created to date and the sort of sustainable business we've created to date. But we've really evolved in our thinking. And as Kathryn sort of put it a moment ago, it's really sort of recasting what we've done in the past, which is we provide loans to small businesses. And these small businesses are, your retailers, they're your restaurants, they're your lawn care companies, all those types of companies. But what we're really realizing is that the lending or the borrowing they're taking from us is really just solving one piece of the cash flow conundrum that small business owners face. And we realize that we need to be part of a more comprehensive plan for that small business, really help them understand how to utilize that capital in a more effective and efficient way to take care of the challenges that they see in their business, the natural fluctuations in cash flow, as well as put them in position to borrow money to grow. And so a lot of our journey, we feel, is at the very beginning. And what we've been doing recently is we've been hiring the kind of people that we hired at the very start of the company, people who are a little more entrepreneurial, and can basically help us expand. And I really do think that companies go through these phases where you start out with, a bunch of people who are 80% great at 50 things, and then your company becomes a little more specialized. And then you start hiring people who are 120% great at one thing. And then when you really want to grow again, you have to sort of go back to that concept and start hiring more people who are entrepreneurial. So it's this generalist and specialist theory, and we're going through that process right now. We've brought on a lot of great team members recently who can really help us go through that next expansion phase. You really need to have both.
And we talk a lot of the CEOs who come on the show who are interested in fast exponential growth talk a lot about vision and talk about purpose and talk about mapping the business and the business activity onto that. So would you share for us, like, as you paint that vision, and you said that you're at the beginning of it, as a 300, person company, or I don't know exactly how you
500.
Oh, in terms of employees.
That's how we try to fall asleep at night, counting employees.
Yeah.
As they're jumping over the cabbage fence.
How do you paint that next vision? How do you paint that bigger vision? Because it would seem to me like the company that you are now is also the fulfillment of a vision.
It is. In fact, we do the same thing today that we did when we first started. When we first made our very first loan in the summer of 2010, when we were in our beta period, we do that exact same thing. We made loans to eBay businesses. Now, today that comprises a really small percentage of our population, but we still do that. So we've been drawing these concentric circles around the business, and I think that's made it easier to communicate the vision to folks at Kabbage because they see the natural progression of everything else that we've done. So we do a lot of things internally to make sure that people understand exactly what our focus and vision is. We have a weekly town hall with the whole company where we talk about new things that are happening in the business and answer questions for employees. There are lots of communication vehicles for our employees to understand exactly what our vision is, and we have a series of goals and metrics that are tied to our overall company vision.
Another thing that I think is interesting that comes up a lot is, that vision sits on top of some values that you have, and how do you make sure that now that you're growing and as you're scaling, you're effectively scaling those values and understanding where in the business that they're in alignment, or where in the business they may not necessarily be as aligned as you would like?
So culture, and I really give Kathryn all the credit for this. She really is a very strong culture person in the company, and has really, I think, helped me understand the importance of culture over the years. And we created this environment. I think we both worked in places in the past where you look up at the clock and you'd wonder, hey, when's 5 o'clock coming around? And I think we've always just wanted more than anything else to be in a place that we actually wanted to be in and weren't staring at that clock. So how do you create an environment like that? And I feel like, there's lots of random thoughts for this, but trying to compartmentalize it a little bit. A few years ago, we went through an exercise where we realized we had to codify the values in the company. And the way we did that was we didn't go online and say cool corporate values and see what the Google results were. We thought about the culture we created and we said, hey, let's try to identify those things that make this culture unique. And we came up with a bunch of things that we realized were important. The number one is care deeply. And that means not just about, our customers, but also about one another, about our investors, partners, and also about our community. And it's something that's always been a part of the company from the very beginning. We also have this crazy interview we go through that actually Kathryn and I take most of our employees that are going through the process. We used to interview everybody. We're still interviewing nearly everybody towards the end. And what that interview is supposed to do is elicit folks who are self-aware. They know what they're good at and what they are not good at. I'm going to, I'm on radio, so I have to make sure I don't use certain words here. They know when to raise a hand when they need help, and they know how to lend a hand when somebody else raises theirs. They embrace the differences between them and others at the company and don't merely tolerate. We think the word tolerate means you hate it, but you put up with it. And we're trying to really build an authentic culture, which means that when you come in the office, you feel like you can be yourself. There's not the work Rob and the home Rob, or the work Kathryn and the home Kathryn, because that creates a lot of stress when you feel like you have to be somebody different at work. And it also impedes your ability to build relationships with those around you because they're not getting to know the real you. And so I had a guy that came in the office a few years ago and he says, oh, you need to have the pool table and the ping pong table and the beer for the young people. We have all those things. I said, yeah, but that's not the culture. But when you have a culture where people actually establish genuine relationships with one another, then they want to hang out after work or even during work and do those things. So that's why those are present, not to create culture, but to embody the culture.
Mm-hmm. So you use some really big words, right? You said care deeply and authenticity and self-awareness.
Yep.
And some other really big concepts. And I think for us listening, I mean, we embrace those, we believe in those, and yet it's like driving them down into the behavior of people on a day-to-day basis that is the challenge. And so I would love it if you would share with the other CEOs who are listening some of the things that you do to like have these things show up, at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in the middle of the year.
Well, I think one of the ways we do that is by celebrating when people do it. So at this town hall every week, we have something called the Thinking Right Award. And those are peer-nominated awards for people who are actually embodying and living those exact values that we just said. And there's a different pin for every single characteristic that we encourage. And so what happens is we read them out. We read the awards at town hall. People come up and they get the award. So we really talk a lot about what it means to care deeply, what it means to win, what it means to embody all of our core values. And I think that's really a great way for people to see it in action and to understand exactly what it means to live those values.
Mm-hmm. And so I would love it if then you would kind of roll us back. And did you have a process where you took an intentional approach to designing your culture, where you sat down and you said, okay, we did the exercise to elicit what we know our values are, right? So we didn't go on Google. We figured out we know what our values are. And then did you, after that, say, here are things that we're going to do to like make sure that these values show up? Or what was the next step that you took after you but you kind of elicited and discerned what those values were?
I don't know, KP, you might have a different answer than this. Go ahead.
I don't think it was that intentional. I think as Rob mentioned, we basically took a look at the things that already existed in the culture and we just named them for all intents and purposes. So it wasn't intentional as you might describe. We did want to make sure that we didn't want to look around and see things we didn't like and name them, and we didn't see a lot of that.
And we didn't start the company. I think a lot of people have these preconceived notions, and you even think about the way most buildings are constructed, right? You look at office space and the office space is constructed to really separate people out, create cliques inside the company and do those things. And I think companies like Spaces and WeWork and other companies are trying to create more collaborative spaces. And, so I think it was a combination of things. We're a low ego environment. Kathryn and I sit out at desks like everybody else there. We're not focused on like the corner office or the perks or anything like that. We joke, we curse, we, ourselves. And, I worked in a big law firm, but I had to be somebody different when I was there than when I was home. And, when you start a business, you don't have to do that anymore. Of course, you hope that your base nature and character is a good one, so that you don't, portray somebody that's negative if that's not who, if that's who you are. But, it's pretty simple. I think people try to make culture really complicated, and I think it's actually really simple. Like, how should people treat one another? How, what interest should they take in one another's lives? What should they expect of one another? Those things are pretty simple. Don't make them difficult, and don't make that seem like it's so counterculture in the workplace. That really is what it should be.
And the other thing that's important is you're not looking for people who look like you, who act like you, who share your same interests or your religious views or whatever those things may be. The way we actually attract people attracts lots of different kinds of people. You name the kind of person that might exist in the world, and they work for our company, every background, every religion, every ethnicity, almost every geography. So it really does, I think, lend itself to diversity more so than I think a really directed, specific hierarchical approach to culture.
And people know in our atmosphere that treating others with disrespect won't fly. You could be the greatest employee of all time. In terms of your capabilities, what you're trying to achieve, your insights. But if you're a jerk, we're going to fire you. It's plain and simple. You're not going to last. So we're very, very strong, I think, on the hiring side to ask a set of questions and elicit responses that help us understand who that individual is at their core. And we let them know the environment that we've created. And if they're making a decision to join us because they want some lofty title, well, guess what? We don't have titles at Kabbage. So they're not going to get that. If they want a job because they want some nice office, well, too bad again. We don't have an office. If they want to come to Kabbage because they really, think they can get a great executive assistant to help them, guess what? We don't have that either. They're just not going to have those things. We want people who can both, be good people, can, pull up their own pants during the day. They can do these things, and they don't need all the pomp and circumstance that surround sometimes the roles that are out there. We got rid of titles. It was one of the most important things we did because people were arguing about them. Oh, this person had this title and that, I feel like I do just as, and we're like, you know what? No more titles. And on LinkedIn,
Stone over there is is there rooting for them. Like, it's great.
And on LinkedIn and on the website, Kathryn and I are labeled co-founder and Kabbage heads. And we like Kabbage head because in the UK, that means you're brain dead. We thought that was fairly appropriate.
But we tell everybody, listen, internally, you don't have a title. You put whatever you want to on LinkedIn. If you want to say you're the CEO, great, have a party. We don't really care. But internally, we're not going to do that.
Call yourself what you really think you are. And guess what? The system works itself out, right? So if you want to go on, like literally, there could be 10 people calling themselves CEO of Kabbage right now. I have no idea.
And you obviously don't care.
I couldn't even care less. I literally, we don't care about that. But if you think you're, the equivalent of a director or senior manager, put it on. That title is going to be, if you want to think about it this way, judged by the other people in the company who have put their own titles on there, right? So it's almost a self-policing mentality when it comes to that.
And people know too, internally. I will people test it. Did you see what XYZ put on their LinkedIn profile? Did you see that title? I mean, it really is. It's a self-cleaning oven.
We played a joke. So there's somebody who joined us in the finance area, and sometimes there's certain roles that when you're going out in meetings, I can understand the argument that it helps to have a title on your card, right? But we don't do that.
Nobody has titles on their business cards.
Nobody has titles on the business cards. And so as a joke, what we've done is we have printed up his card.
Does he know yet? Has he
I don't
seen
know.
it?
I don't know. But we've also interspersed cards within those that say head of money, numbers, and other shit like that. Sorry. And that's been sprinkled throughout his box of business cards. So he
may have handed them out, and he doesn't even know it's on there.
We will do that. We're a high prank environment too. So if you leave your passport on your desk, you might want to check your picture before you go through TSA, because we will do something to it. And I guess that
just happened to me.
All right, listeners, you've been talking to the untitled people who started Kabbage, a fintech firm here in Atlanta. And we've already been talking about, how you were growing the company. And okay, so you've taken you elicited and discerned what your values are. You gave language to the values that were already there. And now you're going to go from like the size you are now to some like other bigger size. And like you want the culture and the people to keep doing what these people that you started with are doing. So are you going to start thinking about being intentional about it and kind of giving some organization to it so that the, 1,000th person is still like the, 299th person?
Well, there is intention and organization to it. There's a great onboarding program that we have that is really intentional about including the cultures and the values of the company and, explaining what that looks like and how it works. So I think that from a training perspective, from an orientation perspective, we can get people in. We have some deputies, I would say, who also stand in when Rob and I can't be there for this final interview process to, again, continue to inculcate that culture into the new employees. So and to weed out potentially people who don't fit. So I think that there are some intentional things that we're doing. It's not just completely random.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't want to give the impression you walk in and it's like just
free for all.
Yeah, free for all. Everybody running around and painting on the walls and stuff. I mean, folks are really focused because they love the company, they love our mission, they love the culture of the company, and so they're really focused on. They really care about their work. I mean, they really care about not letting. The other thing is when you build these relationships, and it's not intentional that we did this in order to extract some company benefit from it. But when you build a culture like we have, folks rely on one another. And so if you're not doing your job and you're not really executing on the things that you promised, you're not just letting the company down, you're letting your buddy down. That's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. And so paint the picture for us as you think about this new growth horizon, the expansion of your purpose into these various stakeholders and how you're thinking about this next horizon of your growth.
Well, some of it is around organizational structure for sure, because, we really have had a single product until very recently. And so what we're doing is organizing around these sort of vertical product categories. And we have a whole team of folks who work horizontally to support all of them. And so Rob used this term earlier, but I think codifying that structure and sort of rallying everyone around that and understanding, what's your role and what is somebody else's role and how do we prioritize work? I mean, these are all, everybody who's listening is like, yeah, I know that's really hard to do and it's super frustrating. And it really is just trying to make sure that everyone really understands, why are we doing this work first and why are we doing this work second? That whole process of prioritization is important, but communicating why you made those decisions is equally as important.
And it's because people actually care about the outcome that we're trying to achieve, right? They're not just trying, they actually understand the mission of the company, what we're trying to achieve. And they are, kind of a little bit at times the judge and jury as to whether we're sticking to what we have committed ourselves to. And it's really interesting. You see that through the entire organization. We had a situation with hurricanes a year ago, that were quite devastating. And when you're lending money to small business owners, you run into, and you leave open available credit to small business owners, you see, potential negative impact when you're trying to figure out how you can continue to lend to businesses that have really had a big disruption. And our customer service team was fielding calls from small business owners that were really, this was their whole life. And, how was Kabbage going to handle, continuing to support them through this period of time? And it was a really difficult day in trying to figure out how to have those conversations, but had to have those conversations with the entire team that was customer facing, because they believe so passionately,
they care deeply,
that they're the advocates of our
deeply.
customers, right? They're the voice of our customers, and they are in tears that these customers are suffering so much. And it's giving me goosebumps now. It really is fantastic to see that team just get so far behind our customer, and really rally to support them. And that was great.
What did you do? What was the business outcome? What did you do?
So we set up first of all, what we did is we created a bunch of situations where customers could skip payments, so that they didn't have to worry about that. We really worked hard to maintain availability of capital for those customers in those areas to get back on their feet. We waived any sort of additional fees, and we, in certain circumstances for certain industries, we actually expanded the capital that we made available to them, because those businesses were the ones that were going to help the communities rise up again. And so there was a variety of things. But by the way, we also made some mistakes, because we're a young company. We haven't done that. And so but the customer service team let us know what those mistakes were. And so we were able to incorporate that into our, at the time, planning of what we were doing, so we could react real time. And it also informed the way we handled it going forward for the subsequent hurricane last year and then the hurricane this year.
We also made sure that every single person talking to customers had all the resources available for other agencies that could be helpful to small businesses, because whether it's the SBA, whether it's FEMA, there are tons of agencies whose sole job it is to help businesses specifically in these times of crisis. So we wanted to make sure that they could get access to those resources.
Mm. And for me, this is an exceptional example of caring deeply and living the values, which is really, really exciting. And I would love to talk with you all for forever. But as we kind of move to a close, I would love to hear what's new and exciting that's at Kabbage that you want our listeners to know. You mentioned the investment from SoftBank. Anything else that's happening? New service, you're hiring. What's up?
We're always hiring. So if you go to Kabbage.com and you look under company and jobs that are open, we're always looking for great team members. So that's something we're always doing. Look, we're a company that's in growth mode. We're a company that's in not just growth mode over our core business, but I'd say vision growth mode, where we're seeing where this business can be over the next 5, 10, and 15 years. And we're very committed to seeing that through. And it's all around small business. It's all about helping small businesses manage cash flow and figure out, how they're going to be able to get to that next critical milestone themselves. So every day brings something different. And one thing I love about this company is I feel like every day I walk in the door, the opportunity we have today is bigger than it was the day before. And so that's what's so exciting to me.
Mm-hmm. Great. And if listeners want to get in touch with you to hear more about anything they've heard, how can they do that?
Well, you can reach us directly via email, rob@kabbage.com and Kathryn@kabbage.com.
Kathryn, it's very important, because Kathryn can be spelled many ways. And by the way, we should put these other aliases in there. But Kathryn.
Very good.
She gets very touchy about her name at times.
Ooh. Really, but not about her title.
Not about
title.
Just call me Kathryn. That's all.
Great. Well, listeners, we've been talking to Kathryn Petralia and Rob Frohwein from Kabbage. You've been listening to CEO Exclusive. I'm your host, Soyini Koch, and I hope you have a profitable, productive, and very prosperous week. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This show is brought to you by Anona Enterprises, where strategy is your access to money and performance. Learn more at AnonaEnterprises.com.